The Lagos skyline glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows as Victoria Hartwell sat at her vanity, applying the final touches of lipstick. At 28, she had perfected the art of looking effortlessly elegant, though nothing about her was effortless. Every detail was calculated, including tonight's conversation.
Marcus Blackwell entered with 2 glasses of champagne, his tailored suit emphasizing the confident bearing of a man who'd built a tech empire from nothing. At 45, he still had the energy of someone half his age, and the romantic history to match.
"The guest list looks perfect," he said, handing her a glass. "Though I'm surprised you invited so many of my business associates' wives." Victoria smiled at him through the mirror. "Every woman there needs to see what we have, darling." Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing. "That's odd. Rachel just RSVP'd. I haven't spoken to her in 5 years."
"Rachel?" Victoria's voice was honey smooth. "Oh, that fashion designer? I thought she'd add sophistication to the event."
Before Marcus could respond, Victoria's assistant Grace entered, clutching a tablet to her chest. The 32-year-old woman looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma, the final confirmations are in," Grace said quietly. All 20 have accepted." The champagne glass stopped halfway to Marcus's lips. 20? "Victoria, what is Grace talking about?" Victoria stood, her silk robe flowing around her like armor. "Your exes, Marcus. Every single woman you dated seriously in the past 15 years. I invited them all to our wedding." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus set his glass down with controlled precision, the kind of restraint that came before an explosion. "Have you lost your mind? Jennifer? Sophia? Diane? Some of those relationships ended badly." "Exactly my point." Victoria's chin lifted defiantly. "They need to see that you're mine now. Completely and irrevocably mine. This isn't possession, Victoria. This is cruelty. To them. To me." Victoria's eyes flashed. "Is it? Or are you afraid one of them still has a claim on your heart? Because if you're truly over them, truly ready to be my husband, then their presence shouldn't matter." Marcus ran his hand through his graying hair, a gesture Victoria had seen countless times when he was stressed. "What exactly are you trying to prove?" "That I won," she said simply. "That every woman who thought she could tame the great Marcus Blackwell failed, and I succeeded. When they watch you say I do to me, they'll finally accept it's over." "And if I call off the wedding?" For just a moment, Victoria's carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing something raw and desperate beneath. "Then you prove I'm just like them. Another woman who couldn't keep you." Grace cleared her throat uncomfortably. Should I leave?" "No," Victoria said, her composure restored. "You should go home and rest. Tomorrow's a big day." She turned back to Marcus. "For all of us." Grace collapsed on her couch and immediately video-called her sister Charlotte in London. She needed to talk to someone who wasn't involved in this disaster. Charlotte's face appeared on screen, concerned. "You look exhausted. Is it the wedding?" She invited all of them, Charlotte. All 20 of Marcus's exes. "What? That's psychotic." Grace rubbed her temples. "I tried to warn her, but she's obsessed. She hired private investigators to track them down. The invitations were personalized. Each one mentioned specific memories Marcus shared with them. It was like she wanted to twist the knife." "Why would she torture herself like this?" Charlotte asked. Grace sighed deeply. "She showed me something once. A photograph from a charity gala 2 years ago. Marcus with his ex, Diane. They were laughing at something, completely at ease with each other. Victoria was in the background, just another guest. She said that was the moment she decided she'd have him no matter what it took. This isn't love, Grace. This is a conquest." "I know," Grace whispered. "But I've also seen how he looks at her. He loves her, Charlotte. He really does. Which makes this whole thing even sadder. She's about to humiliate herself trying to prove something that doesn't need proving." The venue was spectacular. a luxurious estate overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, with white roses and orchids adorning every surface. As guests began arriving, an uncomfortable tension settled over the garden like humidity before a storm. Diane Foster arrived with her husband James, both dressed impeccably. At 38, Diane had aged gracefully, her success as a lawyer evident in her confident stride. "Are you sure about this?" James asked quietly. "Marcus and I ended amicably," Diane replied. "We've been friends for years. I'm curious about the woman who finally caught him." Near the entrance, Rachel Summers was checking in when she spotted another familiar face. Sophia Okafor, a doctor Marcus had dated 6 years ago. "I thought I was special getting an invitation," Rachel said, approaching Sophia. "Then I started calling around." Sophia's laugh was bitter. "All 20 of us are here. Someone's making a statement, and I don't think it's Marcus." Jennifer Adler, a former model who'd dated Marcus in her early 30s, overheard. "The bride's making a spectacle of us. We're trophies in her display case. Look at all the women my man left behind." Grace approached the group, clearly uncomfortable. "Ladies, if you'll proceed to the garden, the ceremony begins in an hour." As the Exes moved toward their seats, whispers rippled through the crowd. Other guests had begun to notice the unusual pattern. So many beautiful, accomplished women, all alone or carefully avoiding each other. Victoria stood before a full-length mirror in her wedding dress, in custom creation worth more than most people's cars. She looked perfect. She felt hollow. Her mother, Patricia, entered, closing the door softly behind her. "You look beautiful, darling, though I still don't understand why." "Don't start, Mother." Patricia ignored the warning. "These women will remember this day, Victoria, but not the way you hope. They'll remember your insecurity, not your triumph." Victoria spun around, her eyes blazing. "Insecurity? I'm marrying a billionaire while his entire romantic history watches. That's power." "That's fear," Patricia said gently. "You're so terrified of losing him that you're trying to rewrite history. But love isn't a competition with a finish line, sweetheart." Victoria's hands began to tremble. She pressed them against her dress to still them. He still dreams about Diane. Last month he murmured her name in his sleep. Patricia's expression softened with understanding. "Oh, sweetheart. He says he loves me." Victoria's voice cracked, tears threatening her makeup. "But how do I know I'm not just the latest chapter? How do I know I'm the last one? When he sees them all today, watching him choose me, maybe then I'll finally believe I won." Patricia pulled her daughter into an embrace. "You can't force someone to prove their love by humiliating yourself. That's not how this works." Marcus adjusted his tie for the 3rd time, his hands unsteady. His best man, Derek, watched from a leather armchair, nursing a whiskey despite the early hour. "You don't have to go through with this circus, you know," Derek said. "I love her, Derek. Even with this madness, I love her." "Then why does she need to prove it to 20 other women?" Marcus sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "Because I made a mistake. Early in our relationship, I told her about Diane, how we almost got back together 3 years ago, how I'd wondered what if for years after we broke up." Victoria smiled and changed the subject, but something shifted that day. "She's been competing with a ghost ever since." "You created a monster," Derek observed. "I created doubt," Marcus corrected. "I've told her 1,000 times she's different, that she's the one, but she doesn't believe it." He looked at his friend. "Maybe she never will." Derek leaned forward. "So what are you going to do? Let her put on this show?" Marcus stood, straightening his jacket. "I'm going to marry her. And then, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I chose right." The garden was filled to capacity. The 20 Exes sat scattered throughout the crowd, impossible to miss if you knew what to look for. Marcus stood at the altar, his face unreadable as the music began. Victoria appeared at the end of the aisle, breathtaking in white. But as she walked, her eyes weren't on Marcus. They were scanning the crowd, finding each ex-girlfriend, cataloging their reactions. Diane sat impassively. Rachel looked uncomfortable. Sophia seemed amused. Jennifer's face showed pity. That last expression nearly broke Victoria's stride. She didn't want pity. She wanted envy. When she reached the altar, Marcus took her hands. For the first time that day, Victoria looked directly at him. What she saw there made her breath catch. Not anger, but sadness. The officiant began the ceremony, but Victoria barely heard the words. All she could think about was the look on Marcus's face and the growing realization that she'd made a terrible mistake. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence was oppressive. Victoria could feel 20 pairs of eyes on her back. Not with envy, with pity. The officiant continued, but suddenly Marcus raised his hand. "Wait," he said. The crowd gasped. Victoria's heart stopped. Marcus turned to face the guests, still holding Victoria's hand. "Before we continue, I need to say something." He took a breath. "Many of you here today are women I once cared for, women who helped shape who I became. I'm grateful for what we shared, and I'm glad many of you have found happiness." He turned back to Victoria, his eyes intense. "But I need everyone here, especially my bride, to understand something. I'm not marrying Victoria because she's the last woman on a list. I'm marrying her because she's the first person who made me understand what I was looking for all along. Every relationship before her wasn't a failure. It was a step that led me here." Tears streamed down Victoria's face, ruining her makeup. "Victoria," Marcus continued, his voice softer now. "You didn't need to prove anything to anyone. You already won. The moment I fell in love with you, the competition ended. There is no race. There is no finish line. There's just us, if you'll still have me." Victoria looked out at the crowd one more time. Diane was smiling gently. Even Jennifer looked approving. They weren't her enemies. They never had been. The only person she'd been fighting was herself. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. Then louder to everyone. "I'm sorry. This was cruel and unnecessary, and She looked at Marcus. "I was so afraid of losing you that I almost lost you anyway." Marcus squeezed her hands. "You haven't lost me. You never could. But Victoria, you have to stop fighting ghosts. Can you do that?" She nodded, unable to speak. The officiant, clearly relieved, resumed the ceremony. When they reached the vows, Victoria's voice was steady but humble. "I promise to love you without fear, to trust you without proof, and to never, ever invite your exes to anything again." The crowd laughed, the tension finally breaking. When Marcus kissed his bride, it wasn't a victory. It was a beginning. One Victoria finally understood she'd already won. The reception was in full swing when Diane approached the bride's table. Victoria tensed, but Diane's smile was genuine. "That took courage," Diane said, "admitting you were wrong in front of everyone." "I made a fool of myself," Victoria replied. "You made yourself human," Diane corrected. "And for what it's worth, he chose well. The Victoria who could admit that mistake? She's someone who can keep Marcus Blackwell, the one who invited us all. She would have lost him within a year." Diane extended her hand. After a moment, Victoria shook it. As the night wore on, something unexpected happened. Several of the exes approached Victoria, not with judgment, but with understanding. They shared their own stories of insecurity, of competing with ghosts, of learning to trust. By the end of the night, Victoria had exchanged numbers with 3 of them. Grace approached with champagne. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Blackwell?" Victoria watched Marcus laughing with guests across the room. "Like I just learned an expensive lesson." "And what lesson was that?" Victoria smiled, finally genuine. "That you can't claim someone who's already yours. You can only trust them enough to stay." Marcus caught her eye across the room and winked. Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years: certainty. The competition was over. The real marriage could finally begin.